This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with Sue Hackman of Guildford Labour Party, and Sue is the campaign manager for the party. Hello Sue, welcome to the Guildford Dragon.
Hello Martin.
Now let's get straight into it. Are you pleased or disappointed with the Surrey County Council election results?
Well, it was my initial reaction to be disappointed. We had some cracking candidates who would make fantastic councillors, and I was sorry for them that we didn't build our vote, but we didn't lose votes. We gained just a tiny amount. I would have liked it to have been more, obviously. I guess I feel it wasn't Hartlepool, and we did a good job in getting over our key policies. So I'm not overly disappointed, but I feel sorry for our candidates. They were good.
Okay, but you did gain one seat, but it was only one in Egham.
Fantastic campaign, yes, he did.
Right. Nonetheless, that only gives you 2 seats in the council of 81 seats. I mean, it's not a huge representation. So what is the point of voting Labour in Surrey?
I think Labour provides a unique voice, and there's always an important, even just one person can be an oppositional voice. I think in Surrey, there's some evidence, isn't there, that voters are not content to have a council that is overwhelmed by one party because they get complacent. And I think that is partly why the Conservatives have lost seats this time. So I'm very pleased that we've got not just one voice, but 2 voices now. No, it's not great. This is Surrey. And we're trying hard to be an effective opposition and to offer challenge and new ideas and to work with the parties that are elected.
Yes, and you mentioned the vote share standing up, and you've got 14% of the overall popular vote in the county, which under PR would give you, what would that give you? About 10 seats. So what is it? Now, Labour traditionally hasn't been in favour of PR. Is the view shifting?
Well, if you were in a safe seat in the north, I used to be in the Labour Party in the north, and I think they probably want to hold on to it. But my own feeling is that I think it might work quite well in local politics in the way it does at parish level, which is hardly politicised at all. You can get a kind of alliance of people working well together. It's a smaller number. Can I be honest and say I'm a bit more sceptical about the national parties doing proportional representation. This is because I worked with the coalition, the Conservative Lib Dem coalition, and I found it to be rather cumbersome and slow, and I didn't think you got very coherent policies. That what you got is a lot of horse trading, so the policies were rather mixed and sometimes pulled against each other. So my instinct from there was not to rush into it. Yeah, locally, absolutely. Nationally, I'd really want to think hard about it. I better say to you, I'm probably in a minority here. I think most of my colleagues do think we should be looking at proportional representations. That is the feeling.
Okay, and what about the official party position nationally? What is it? Because I'm not clear.
It isn't in favour of it at the moment, but there's definitely discussions happening. And as you've probably realised from the national situation, I think there's a massive policy review coming in the Labour Party to hone down what really are the centrepieces of policy now, and what is the future of democracy when you have perhaps a smaller country. If Northern Ireland goes, if Scotland goes, that is not inconceivable in the next 5 years.
Well, they don't even have to become independent, do they? I mean, it's just, even at the moment, there are very few Labour seats in Scotland. Are there any? A couple, maybe?
There are some now, actually. Yes, right. They did bring some back. But it's I don't think the Conservatives are going to let that happen in a hurry, do you? So,
no, but I'm asking what your party's position is. But you've explained it. That's great. Thank you.
It is up for rediscussion.
Okay. Now let's come back to the local scene. What issues came up on the doorstep when you were campaigning?
Good question, because they weren't county council issues. I'd say by and large the issues that came up on the doorstep were probably Guildford Borough Council issues. They were very local. There was a lot about planning. People are nervous about these huge housing developments that are coming, and even more worried about the infrastructure that goes with them. So in my own division, which was in the east, people aren't averse to housing per se, but they are worried about the traffic it will bring down their main roads. But, you know, that's not absolutely just a county council issue. You got the usual amount of potholes, which I suppose was a bit of transport. If anything, transport was the main county council issue. But people weren't asking, nobody asked me about social care, Martin. Nobody asked me about the education. I mean, education's been my life work. I was desperate for somebody to ask me about education.
Right.
But
Okay, well,
national politics too came up, national stuff.
Okay, let's just park social care for 1 minute, and perhaps we'll come back to education too. But where does the Guildford Labour Party stand on the local plan as it is, and particularly development of the greenbelt, which of course was created, I think, in the post-war period when Labour was in charge?
It was, but the population was 2/3 the size of what it is now. And here in Guildford, we know all too well there is a need for housing. I don't think anyone's worried about building for housing. I think they're probably worried about the impact on their own immediate environment, like the traffic coming down. The Guildford Labour Party supports having a local plan, and we are a bit distressed that we've gone for a long time without having a plan that's been agreed and is working forward. It means that development has been very slow in Guildford. And, you know, my own children moved away because they can't afford houses here. We want houses not just for people who rent or for people who can't afford to buy £1 million houses. We want it for our own children. You know, it's not, doesn't seem to me to be a big ask. On the greenbelt, of course we support the greenbelt. Nobody wants to concrete paradise. But on the other hand, I do think greenbelt policy is feeling very old to me, not the principle of it, but the idea of a belt constraining London. It's a rather crude notion. And I do like the idea of maybe trading land so that we can all share the green belt. I mean, if you're living in the middle of Guildford, you don't actually get a lot of green belt unless you've got a car and you can get out. Ask a family.
Is that true? Is that true though? So you can walk from the town centre into Greenbelt very quickly, because I live right in the edge of the town, and you know it only minutes away.
Well, you'd have to ask a family in lockdown who was living in a flat without.
Yeah, I agree with that. If they were in the middle of some of the estates in Guildford, it was more difficult. And yes, I see what you mean.
I want to be just in a sentence. I think we should share more of the green space. We should have more green space around rather than just outside. I think often it's helped as a shield against development.
Okay, but it does sound as if you're sitting on the fence a bit there. And, you know, you can only give greenbelt away once, can't you? You can
replace some of it, or you can trade it. You know, you give some land here in return for space.
But that's not what's happened, is it?
Well, it has actually happened. We have more greenbelt now than we had 20 years ago, a lot more, as land has come free or been deindustrialised. But I wouldn't especially say that.
In Guildford, you mean? Or nationally?
Nationally, yeah.
Nationally, okay. And but you know, your two councillors did vote in favour of the local plan.
They did.
Do they regret that?
No, but I think that as time goes on, once you've agreed the local plan is a kind of framework, and I think often the discussion is in the detail once you get to design and building and what kind of houses will go there. So no, I don't think they do regret it. I think they know now that there's a lot of local feeling rises up when you get to the point of envisioning what will stand on that land. Okay.
And are they in favour of a review now? And is your party in favour of a review?
I think we have discussed it actually this week, and I think we do favour a review. And it is true that statistics can be updated. I just hope it isn't a stalling tactic, you know, a kind of anti-development. There's a lot of nimbyism about. I worry about the nimbyism. I worry about the nimbyism in the R4G.
But presumably then your party supports the moves for more housing in the town centre. Where
we do. Because the economy's changed so dramatically in the last decade. You've got to think housing, because who wants, there aren't people begging for shops.
Exactly. Okay. Thanks very much for that. And now I want to move on to social care. So social care issues should be meat and drink to your party, locally and nationally. And the Tories have a patchy record in Surrey at best. Did you make enough of it, do you think, in the campaign?
We would have liked to have made more, but obviously the picture is still moving really quite quickly. And again, that's one of the big policies that we will be discussing in the conference that's coming up in the autumn. I think generally speaking, we in the local party are in favour of equality of social care in old age. That once you're old, that's what you are. Once you're past work, everybody has a right to a dignified old age. And I think we'd like to see equity in the system for workers as well as people. I'm thinking of the terrible pay that some of the people who are employed in the private sector receive. So I think we'd look for equality of care. I personally would support a kind of nationalisation of healthcare. I think the bigger issue, I think most parties think that. I think the bigger issue is how you fund it.
Okay. And before the election, you said you're looking forward to reading the report, which wasn't allowed to be published before the election. The report on social care, child social care in Surrey. So you've read it now, presumably. What's your reaction?
I feel very anxious about the situation with children. This has been going now since 2014, when Ofsted failed Surrey's education services, and only once in all this time has it risen above, requiring improvements. Some of the things that well, it's not a report actually, it's a letter that's from this time, is, I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to be complacent about failing in the management of the disabled, for example, or not finding enough places for children that would be suitable for them. It's been a running sore. I mean, why can't they sort it? There is a failure of leadership and management going on. Now, I know there's a new leadership and a new management, and we want to support them. There's no future where you get into loggerheads with the leadership of children's services, but it doesn't look like there's urgent attention to me. More needs to be done. And when Ofsted revisit and do a new inspection, then we'll know how far.
Isn't it a bit of an indictment on all of us that we don't prioritise this subject more? Because obviously it only affects a minority of people. But, the way we treat these people is a measure of our civilization, isn't it?
It is, and we can be a selfish and materialistic society. My party stands against that.
Okay. So lastly, what's the Labour Party policy on devolvement of power to local authorities? Because it seems to me that over the decades since the war, we've seen more and more centralisation of that power. Would you devolve it back out to local authorities, especially in the area of planning?
Yes, I would. We would. And we would do it in unitary fashion. We'd like to see Surrey split into 3 smaller units, which can be more responsive, but more importantly, be a bit more integrated and coherent. I think this is one of the things about not getting county council issues on the doors this time, is people do not understand the levels, and we're ending up duplicating costs by having they're very good officials, but there are a lot of them. And I just think it would make more sense to have chunks of smaller authorities, which are much more accountable, much more democratic to local people, and work coherently on all policies. That the police is integrated with social care, is integrated with education. It's not doing us any good to have these different layers. So I think our first policy here is to work towards unitary authorities. They're not without their problems, Martin. I've worked with unitary authorities in the past, but I do think they serve better than this mammoth distant council.
But wouldn't it only empower nimbyism in Surrey?
It would. I think to a certain extent it is, and that isn't that the job of a political party. I feel as though that's our job. Is that we've got to persuade people that there's a better way to do things and to work from principles. I think nimbyism is when people feel isolated and they feel necessarily that they have to look after themselves first because nobody else is. And you've got to create an authority that cares, is responsive, is much more face-to-face consultative than we currently find. And I think this is the job of political parties to argue how you would develop those authorities. That's our failure, actually, as parties. We haven't made people feel involved. We've made people feel disengaged. And the reason I know this, that we've all failed, is that the don't votes won this election, and they won it decisively, and they won it again. And after the Conservatives, the Lib Dems didn't come second, incidentally. They came third, because second was, if you called all the various residents' associations and all the independents as one body, if you count those up, they came second. And that is when people are disenchanted, I think, that the system caters and responds to them. And we accept our share of the responsibility.
Okay.
I think, yes, we accept our share of the responsibility.
Sue Hackman, the Labour Party, thank you very much for talking to the Guildford Dragon.
Thank you, Martin.